Binge eating is actually pretty common in our society. It's the type of overeating to the point of feeling very uncomfortable, paired with feelings of guilt, shame, and a feeling of loss of control. It's often done privately, alone, when nobody's around, sometimes because of loneliness, depression, sadness, anger, anxiety. If you feel like you experience some binge eating, reflect on your past, reflect on your future, and reflect on what you're currently experiencing right now. If you find that your weight loss journey is being impeded by this feeling of being out of control and overeating to the point of experiencing guilt or shame, maybe it's time to seek out help. Today, I'd like to share with you a personal story about how I've experienced binge eating in my own life. I often will find myself feeling lonely, but I don't necessarily identify it as loneliness. I like to personally believe I'm a very independent person, a very empowered person. Yet, seasonally, my husband works away. While my husband is working away, I'm left at home to take care of the children, go to work, prepare all of my meals at home alone. I began to see a pattern. In the evenings, I would feel out of control. I would feel hungry all the time, like I could not ever reach a point of satisfaction. This in turn created a lot of feelings of shame and guilt, reaching for sweets, eating way more than I ever thought I could or would ever want to. This last fall is where I really had the most deep, profound insights ever in my life around this attachment that I have to my loved one, my husband, about him not being home. I was encouraged to start doing a meal tracking plan through my gym and my fitness routine. And I knew that this would actually be a very fun exercise for me, knowing that it is fall and my husband was gone. But what I didn't realize is how natural it is to have these perfectionistic, all or nothing thoughts as you're tracking down everything that it is that you're eating. The very thing that we ask all of our weight loss surgery patients to do so that they can reflect on their food choices. So this process of keeping a food journal and writing down what I was eating, I was very aware of my caloric intake. Now, I tried to practice discernment and not judgment, but on this particularly vulnerable day, it was a weekend. Normally our family's together on a weekend. Normally my husband likes to cook for me and provide for me. There's so much warmth and affection in that home environment. I must have really been missing it this day because in the morning, I wanted to bake. So I baked pancakes, I baked muffins, and I had a lot of fun with my girls doing it. But in the process, started my day eating more carbs, eating more sugar than what I thought was right. At the same time, I recognized that I had an insatiable appetite and I kept eating. And then by following this meal tracking challenge, I was observing all the calories, all the sugar, all the carbohydrates that I was eating, and I made a conscious choice to keep writing it down. And I was really aware of these thoughts, really aware of these feelings. And like I said, I was so hungry and insatiable all day long. To make a long story short, I ended up tracking myself all the way until 10 p.m. Anytime my kids were hungry, I'd make them whatever they wanted and I would eat with them. Whenever I felt snacky, I would eat something too. At the end of the day, I had consumed over 3,700 calories and still didn't feel satisfied. That lack of satisfaction was not because I was underfeeding myself. And so again, I tried to practice a level of awareness and discernment. So at bedtime, I sat down with my journal. And I wrote down all of the thoughts and the beliefs that I was feeling, all the shame and the guilt and why I felt that way. I wrote down that I saw how many grams of sugar I ate, therefore I felt like a failure. I wrote down that I ate too many carbs and I craved too many sweets and I knew I was going to gain weight and be overweight and that it was never going to end. I wrote down all my negative feelings. And then at the very end of my journaling, I wrote down all the positive feelings that you would expect a loving parent, a loving friend, a supportive person, also my husband. I just imagined him there, gave myself all the comfort, all the love I could ever need in that moment. I also wrote down that I forgave myself. I forgave myself for feeling that lonely and that sad and that scared and that it was going to be okay. I also wrote down all the things that I love about myself. The fact that I do love healthy food. The fact that I do love to exercise and take care of myself. The fact that I was a good mother who had fun with her children that day. When I woke up in the morning, I was still feeling very vulnerable, very raw. But I told myself I wasn't going to repeat the same mistake. So I made a 3-egg omelet with lots of veggies. We drank tea, we went outside, we exercised, we tapped into all of our other coping skills that were not necessarily cinnamon rolls and donuts and whatever else that sometimes we reach for comfort. I knew that in that process, by cleaning my house and reorganizing myself, doing laundry, just focusing on the daily tasks that were at hand, would really help get me out of that survival mode. I also turned on some really delightful music. The song that I listened to had the lyrics, "I am whole, I am safe, I feel peace, I heal from a whole place." And as the lyrics were singing, "I heal from a whole place," it almost had this mournful, sobbing cadence to it, and it was a 7-minute song. Without even realizing it, I was cleaning the kitchen, singing the song, and I had the most significant emotional release where I laid down on the kitchen floor and sobbed like a baby. I have come to realize that the root of binge eating and emotional eating is really beyond our conscious control because it's left over from such early childhood memories. I'll get a little more vulnerable with you today to share some context, but I want you to let you know that you don't necessarily need to be this open and vulnerable and sharing with us because sometimes these journeys are quite private. But I was a child raised in an environment with very young parents. So young that they probably shouldn't have been having babies. When we have young parents that are easily distracted and aren't necessarily mature in their own emotional regulation, it really impacts us as infants because we're reliant on our caregivers to sing us lullabies, make us feel safe and calm, and really be present for us every time we cry. My young parents also had a divorce when I was only 18 months old. So I kind of acknowledge this impact on my life in some of these really early remote memories. The other thing that happens when we're an infant is every time we cry, we are given a bottle, maybe a breast, and we are fed every single time we cry to the point of eating so much that we throw up. So there's this attachment, this neurologic attachment to warm, sweet, and fullness that also mimics that love that we received as infants. And I had all of these realizations as I was sobbing on my kitchen floor like a little baby. And then I was able to journal again about that. And from this sort of enlightened epiphany about where my suffering was coming from, my attachment, my love for my husband, that's all this was. My need to eat and feel good in that moment was really just me trying to acknowledge the fact that I miss my husband who likes to cook and take care of me. So I hope today that my story inspires you. It inspires you to think more broadly about your capacity for self-healing. Remember, you are safe and you can heal from a whole place.